By 1942, Hitler's U-boat arm, the Kriegsmarine, was wreaking havoc on Allied shipping. Convoys carrying food, fuel, weapons, and reinforcements were the lifeblood of nations, and every sinking was a strike against survival itself. Yet the true power of the U-boats was not only in the submarine's deadly torpedoes but in the shadowy network of support that kept them in operation: hidden ports, camouflaged repair docks, secret supply lines, and radio stations that coordinated strikes from Norway to the Atlantic islands. The Allies suspected something vast lurked beneath the waves, but piecing it together was nearly impossible. Intelligence reports mentioned disguised harbors, underground tunnels, and ships arriving under cover of darkness, yet no photograph, map, or reconnaissance flight could reveal the full scale. German engineers had learned the hard lessons of World War I: permanence invites attack. So instead of exposed facilities, they created mobility and concealment. Every base was designed to be partially invisible, reinforced, or easily repaired. Fjords, reefs, and cliffs provided natural camouflage, while deception tactics masked human activity. The Empire's lifeblood was coordination. Fuel, torpedoes, spare parts, and provisions had to flow seamlessly to submarines hundreds of miles from Germany. Crews rotated through hidden bases, receiving repairs and resupply, before returning to patrol in the same waters where convoys vanished. And communication, through the Enigma machine, wove an invisible web connecting submarines, supply ships, and command centers. Each U-boat sortie was guided by intelligence that few outside Germany could even imagine. For the men aboard these submarines, the ocean was simultaneously highway, battlefield, and home. Every storm threatened to crush hulls and crew alike. Every Allied convoy could hide unseen perils. Every radio message carried the weight of survival or death. And yet, the Empire endured, a testament to the meticulous planning, technical ingenuity, and audacious secrecy of its architects. The lost city beneath the Atlantic was more than a network. It was a living, breathing system, and for the Allies, discovering its heart would be the difference between victory and catastrophe. When Hitler came to power, Germany's navy was little more than a shadow of its former might. The Treaty of Versailles had gutted the fleet, limiting warships and submarines, leaving the Reich with the barest skeleton of naval power. Yet within this constraint, the Kriegsmarine quietly rebuilt itself in secrecy. The submarine, the U-boat, became the centerpiece of a strategy designed not for glory, but for attrition. The goal was simple: starve Britain of the resources needed to fight, and force the island nation to surrender without ever setting foot on German soil. By 1939, the U-boat arm had evolved into a weapon as much of engineering as of war. The men who commanded them were highly trained, often former merchant sailors or naval cadets, schooled in stealth, endurance, and navigation. Their vessels, sleek and deadly, could strike under the cover of night, vanishing into the depths before enemy counterattacks could respond. Every U-boat was both hunter and hunted, prowling the Atlantic with a precision that seemed almost mechanical. But submarines alone were not enough. Germany needed infrastructure, a support system hidden from Allied eyes. Ports in occupied Norway, Denmark, and France were transformed into fortified submarine bases, often tucked into fjords, harbors, or rocky inlets. Massive U-boat pens rose from the shorelines, reinforced with up to 7 meters of concrete, impervious to bombing. Dry docks, repair stations, and supply depots were concealed beneath camouflage nets, painted to blend with the terrain, and guarded by mines and artillery. Even the supply convoys that carried fuel, food, and torpedoes to these bases were disguised as neutral merchant ships, slipping past Allied patrols with a mixture of daring and deception. Communication was another battlefield. The Enigma machine allowed U-boat commanders to coordinate patrols, resupply operations, and attacks across thousands of miles with encryption that for years, the Allies could not crack. Every patrol was carefully orchestrated, timing synchronized, routes chosen to avoid detection, and contingencies prepared for storms or enemy interception. By combining advanced engineering, secrecy, and ruthless strategy, the Germans created a network that operated almost invisibly. The lost city beneath the Atlantic was born, not as a single port or city, but as a sprawling hidden empire. It would become the backbone of Hitler's strategy to dominate the seas, a shadow infrastructure that could strike anywhere while remaining hidden, a place where ingenuity, fear, and survival merged beneath the waves. Norway's jagged coastline became the northern heart of Hitler's Atlantic Empire, a place where geography and engineering merged into one of the most formidable naval strongholds of the Second World War. Here, deep fjords carved into the mountains provided natural protection, shielded from the prying eyes of Allied reconnaissance aircraft. Into this rugged terrain, the Germans carved their U-boat bases, reinforced with meters of steel and concrete. These submarine pens were designed to withstand even the heaviest bombing raids: 7 meters of reinforced concrete above the docks, layered steel doors, and camouflaged facades that made the massive structures almost invisible from the air. Bombs that could flatten entire cities barely dented them. Inside, the operations were both astonishing and relentless. Submarines glided silently into hidden docks under cover of darkness, guided by a few carefully angled harbor lights designed to be visible only to trained crews. Mechanics and engineers worked tirelessly below decks, repairing engines, reloading torpedoes, and preparing vessels for another deadly patrol. Radio operators tapped out encrypted signals that coordinated attacks across thousands of miles of ocean, keeping the U-boat fleet synchronized with surgical precision. Supply ships navigated icy waters, delivering fuel, provisions, and ammunition, often under the constant threat of Allied aircraft or naval patrols. The fjords themselves were both ally and adversary. Frozen winters brought near impenetrable ice, yet the geography provided concealment, forcing any would-be attacker to navigate narrow passages under constant observation. Mines, anti-aircraft guns, and decoy installations further protected these bases, making them near impossible to attack directly. For months, the Allies could only guess at what lay hidden behind the cliffs and waters. For the men who served there, Norway was both sanctuary and prison. Submarine crews knew that while the fjords offered safety and resupply, every sortie could be their last. Storms battered the coastline, waves threatened to crush smaller vessels, and depth charges could erupt anywhere in the surrounding waters. Every mission required not only skill, but courage and endurance. In these frozen bastions, the lost city beneath the Atlantic revealed its true power. It was not just a collection of ports or docks, it was a fortress that thrived in secrecy, a network of life, death, and machinery hidden in plain sight, and a reminder that in the theater of war, the most formidable battles often occurred far from the eyes of the world, beneath steel, ice, and waves. In the Atlantic, visibility meant life or death. The Germans understood that no fortress, no matter how strong, could survive if it could be easily seen. So they became masters not just of engineering, but of illusion. Camouflage was elevated to an art form. Nets draped over docks, painted tarps blending with cliffs, and carefully arranged debris made massive submarine pens appear to be nothing more than abandoned warehouses or fishing villages. From above, the coastline appeared natural, untouched, and entirely unremarkable. Even the cleverest reconnaissance pilots struggled to discern steel from rock, camouflage from construction. Camouflage extended far beyond the docks themselves. Every movement of personnel and vessels was calculated to avoid detection. Submarines submerged whenever possible, emerging only under the cover of darkness. Fuel and supply ships followed unpredictable routes, often circling islands and fjords to mislead Allied patrols. Harbor lights were angled, shaded, and dimmed strategically, ensuring that a U-boat could glide in unseen while observers above saw only black water. The Germans also deployed decoys on land and sea. Dummy buildings, false rail lines, and fake supply depots fooled Allied bombers into wasting ordnance on nothing more than wood, canvas, and paint. Some ports were entirely decoy, mock-ups built to absorb attacks while the real facilities remained hidden or mobile. Even weather was leveraged as camouflage. Mist, fog, and storms became allies, concealing convoys and repair operations. For Allied intelligence, the hidden empire was maddening. Photographs returned grainy, maps incomplete, and reports contradictory. Each breakthrough revealed only part of the truth. Each misstep risked giving up a convoy to destruction. The German strategy of misdirection meant that, often, the Allies were attacking shadows while the real operations continued unabated. For the crews of the U-boats, camouflage was more than survival, it was lifeline. The difference between being seen and remaining hidden meant the difference between returning safely to base and vanishing beneath the waves. The lost city beneath the Atlantic was a fortress that existed not just in steel and concrete, but in illusion, secrecy, and deception. Every hidden harbor, every obscure dock, and every decoy installation was a carefully orchestrated element of an empire designed to strike unseen, and in war invisibility was power. Every patrol carried the weight of uncertainty. The North Atlantic was a graveyard as much as it was a battlefield. U-boats prowled the shipping lanes, striking convoys with deadly precision, yet for every merchant ship sunk, an enemy submarine sometimes disappeared without a trace. Storms, mechanical failures, and Allied depth charges claimed men as ruthlessly as enemy torpedoes. For the crews aboard these steel predators, the ocean was as much a killer as the human adversary. The Germans had a saying for it: Das Meer des Todes, the Sea of Death. Captains navigated by charts, instinct, and the faintest intelligence from command centers scattered across the Atlantic. Every decision mattered: a miscalculated depth, a poorly timed surface maneuver, a delayed rendezvous with a supply ship, and the ocean could claim the vessel in moments. In many cases, ships vanished before anyone could report a single torpedo fired. Families on both sides of the Atlantic would never know what truly happened to those who were lost. Yet, despite the losses, the empire beneath the waves endured. Hidden bases, camouflaged repair docks, and clandestine supply networks ensured that surviving U-boats could return, refuel, reload torpedoes, and return to patrol in astonishingly short time frames. These networks reduced the attrition rate, keeping the fleet operational far longer than would otherwise have been possible. The Lost City was not a single location. It was an interconnected system of concealment, repair, and replenishment, all designed to sustain submarines in the deadliest waters on Earth. For those who returned, the hidden harbors and fjords of Norway, France, and other secret bases became sanctuaries. Mechanics worked tirelessly to fix engines, patch hulls, and restore the lethal efficiency of vessels that had barely survived storms or depth-charge barrages. Radio operators transmitted encrypted updates, coordinating movements and patrol schedules that stretched across thousands of miles of ocean. Every successful return reinforced the illusion of invincibility, while losses reminded crews that the sea could be merciless. The U-boats that never returned were the silent testimony to the danger of the Atlantic War. Each disappearance fed both fear and legend, amplifying the aura of the Lost City. To the Allies, these vanished vessels were evidence of an invisible network that struck without warning and vanished without trace. To the Germans, they were a reminder of the ocean's power, the fragility of steel against waves, and the ruthless reality that even the most ingenious empire beneath the sea could never escape nature itself. While the U-boats prowled the Atlantic, a quieter, invisible battle raged thousands of miles inland. Allied intelligence agencies worked tirelessly to uncover the secrets of the Lost City beneath the waves. Cryptographers at Bletchley Park pored over enigma-encrypted messages, turning the clattering keys of German communications into critical intelligence. Each decrypted message revealed a fragment of the network, a supply route, a patrol schedule, or the location of a hidden dock. The smallest piece of information could save an entire convoy from destruction or doom an unsuspecting ship to the ocean floor. At the same time, spies risked their lives behind enemy lines. They observed fjords, mapped coastlines, and reported on construction activity. Some slipped across icy waters, disguising themselves as fishermen or local laborers, taking notes on hidden docks or the frequency of U-boat movements. Their reports were painstakingly smuggled back to command centers, where analysts sifted through contradictions and gaps, searching for patterns that could reveal the full scale of the secret empire. Even reconnaissance aircraft played a critical role. Pilots flew missions over Norway, France, and the Atlantic Islands, snapping photographs that would later be studied for signs of deception. They learned to distinguish real docks from decoys, permanent structures from camouflage, shadows from steel. Every successful flight was a small victory, but one misstep could mean death. Despite these efforts, the Lost City remained elusive. Camouflage, mobility, and German ingenuity ensured that even partially uncovered bases could continue operations. Decoy installations misled bombers, while hidden supply routes allowed U-boats to resupply and redeploy. Every Allied victory revealed only a fraction of the network, a tantalizing glimpse of a fortress that was both everywhere and nowhere. This silent, cerebral war was as critical as the battles fought on the open seas. Knowledge became the deadliest weapon. Every intercepted message, every photograph, every spy report had the potential to shift the tide of the Atlantic campaign. And yet, for all their efforts, the Allies were constantly reminded that the Lost City was not simply steel and concrete. It was a complex web of deception, logistics, and secrecy, a hidden empire whose true scale remained shrouded beneath waves, fog, and shadow. By 1943, the Battle of the Atlantic had reached a fever pitch. Every convoy crossing the ocean was a gamble, a high-stakes game where lives and vital supplies hung in the balance. The Allies, desperate to keep Britain and the Soviet Union supplied, fortified ships with anti-submarine guns, equipped escorts with sonar, and deployed aircraft to patrol the endless sea lanes. Yet for every defensive measure, the lost city beneath the waves proved adaptive, deadly, and elusive. The German U-boats were no longer lone hunters. They operated in coordinated wolf packs, converging on convoys from multiple directions with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Submarines shadowed the fleets under cover of darkness, relaying intelligence to the hidden bases that fueled the empire. Every vessel had a purpose, every patrol a predetermined path, and every action a silent understanding of the broader network that supported it. Fuel, torpedoes, and provisions were delivered with exact timing, often through hidden fjords, camouflaged docks, and supply ships disguised as neutral vessels. For the crews, every sortie was a test of endurance, skill, and nerve. Storms battered steel hulls, waves threatened to crush the smallest submarines, and Allied escorts prowled relentlessly. Depth charges could rupture a vessel in seconds. A single miscalculation could doom 30 men to the cold Atlantic. Yet those who returned found sanctuary in hidden harbors, repaired engines, reloaded torpedoes, and prepared to strike again within days. For the Allies, the stakes could not have been higher. Each convoy lost meant food shortages, delayed reinforcements, and a war prolonged by months. Every U-boat destroyed was celebrated, but even with losses mounting, the hidden bases, supply routes, and repair docks of the lost city allowed Germany to continue the fight far longer than predicted. The empire beneath the Atlantic was not just a network of ports, it was a lifeline, an invisible web of coordination that maintained the Kriegsmarine's striking power, often in the face of overwhelming opposition. In the endless expanse of waves and storms, the Atlantic became both battlefield and battleground of wits. The war was no longer simply measured in ships sunk or torpedoes fired. It was a contest of survival, strategy, and endurance. The lost city beneath the Atlantic had made the ocean its fortress, its stage, and its weapon, proving that some of the most decisive battles of World War II were fought not in open skies or on distant shores, but silently beneath the waves. By 1944, the Allies had begun to turn the tide in the Atlantic. Air superiority allowed deeper reconnaissance over the fjords and coastlines where the U-boat empire thrived. Bomber formations swept across Norway, France, and the Atlantic islands, targeting suspected submarine pens and supply depots. Allied convoys were armed with increasingly advanced sonar, depth charges, and escort vessels, transforming the open sea into a treacherous gauntlet for the once dominant U-boats. Every sortie became a calculated risk, every supply mission a battle of timing, stealth, and nerve. Yet the lost city beneath the Atlantic was adaptive. The Germans, aware that their empire could not remain hidden indefinitely, had built redundancy into their networks. Hidden docks could shift locations, camouflaged by nets, paint, and decoys. Supply lines rerouted at the last minute. Even temporary bases carved into fjords could operate for weeks without detection. Allied bombers often attacked decoy installations, hitting nothing more than timber, paint, and sandbags, while the real operations continued uninterrupted. Every successful deception prolonged the empire's reach and maintained the illusion of invincibility. Inside these bases, life was relentless. Engineers worked around the clock repairing engines, reinforcing hulls, and maintaining torpedoes. Crews rotated, barely sleeping between patrols, moving in a rhythm dictated by the ocean and enemy activity. Radio operators coordinated attacks across thousands of miles, transmitting encrypted messages that kept wolf packs in synchronization. Despite the increasing pressure from Allied forces, the empire continued to function, proving its resilience. The counterattack was a battle of attrition and intellect. Allied intelligence hunted for weaknesses in supply lines, decrypted communications, and mapped hidden harbors. Air raids were meticulously planned, timed to strike during the briefest window when submarines docked. And yet, for every success, the Germans found a workaround: a hidden fjord, a shifted dock, a camouflaged supply ship. The struggle was no longer simply about ships sunk or torpedoes fired. It was a war of survival, adaptation, and relentless ingenuity. The lost city was under siege, yet it endured. Its network was a living organism, evolving with each Allied strike, proving that in warfare, resilience and secrecy could be as deadly as any weapon. Even as the Allies closed in, the empire beneath the waves demonstrated that in the Atlantic, visibility was survival, deception was defense, and the war was far from over. By late 1944, the relentless pressure of the Allied counterattack began to take its toll. The once invincible U-boat empire beneath the Atlantic was showing cracks. Allied bombers, now flying with unprecedented accuracy, struck key submarine pens along Norway, France, and the Atlantic islands. Depth charges and improved sonar devastated supply convoys, while newly developed escort tactics inflicted unprecedented losses on U-boats. The hidden bases, which had once seemed untouchable, were exposed. Camouflage and deception could no longer guarantee safety. Attrition wore away at Germany's network. Every sunk supply ship, every destroyed dock, every lost submarine weakened the intricate web that had sustained the empire for years. Fuel shortages slowed patrols. Torpedo stockpiles dwindled. Engineers struggled to repair damaged submarines under increasingly hazardous conditions. Even the natural protection of fjords and cliffs could not shield every installation from repeated bombing raids. The ocean that had once been an ally was becoming a graveyard. Despite the collapse, German ingenuity continued to shine. Some bases were temporarily relocated, hidden docks were rebuilt under cover of night, and supply routes were rerouted to maintain limited operations. Yet these efforts were mere stopgaps. The Allies' intelligence network had mapped the empire, and each subsequent strike hit with deadly precision. What had once been an invisible, untouchable fortress was gradually being dismantled piece by piece. For the men aboard the U-boats, every patrol became a desperate gamble. Storms, Allied patrols, and dwindling resources combined to make survival uncertain. Some crews never returned, others barely escaped, limping back to bases that were no longer safe havens. The rhythm of operations, once calculated, precise, and almost automatic, became chaotic, and the Empire's once formidable presence in the Atlantic was fading. The lost city, which had once seemed immortal, was crumbling. Its hidden docks lay in ruins, supply lines were broken, and the wolf packs that had terrorized the Atlantic were now shadows of their former selves. Yet even in collapse, the remnants of the Empire bore witness to the audacity, ingenuity, and sheer scale of what had been achieved. The Atlantic had swallowed the Empire, but the story of its rise and fall would echo for decades, a testament to human ambition, innovation, and the unforgiving nature of war. Today, the remnants of the lost city lie scattered across the Atlantic seabed. Sunken U-boats, abandoned docks, and concealed tunnels remain as silent witnesses to one of World War II's most extraordinary engineering feats. Divers exploring these wrecks find more than rusted steel and corroded machinery. They uncover a testament to human ingenuity, audacity, and the extraordinary lengths nations will go to wage war in the shadows. The empire beneath the waves was never merely a collection of docks or submarines. It was a living network, a meticulously planned system of supply, concealment, and coordination that operated across thousands of miles of ocean. From hidden fjords in Norway to fortified bases in France, each component was part of an intricate web designed to sustain the Kriegsmarine's offensive, allowing U-boats to strike unseen while evading destruction. The very concept of the lost city was revolutionary, a floating, hidden infrastructure that functioned like a city, yet existed entirely in pieces, constantly adapting to the changing tides of war. For historians, engineers, and veterans, the lost city is a study in contrasts. It was at once brilliant and fragile, audacious and temporary. It relied on secrecy as much as steel, deception as much as engineering. Even as Allied forces eventually dismantled the empire, its influence endured, shaping the strategies and countermeasures of modern naval warfare. Lessons learned beneath the waves informed sonar technology, convoy tactics, and even the design of post-war submarine bases around the globe. And yet, perhaps its most enduring legacy lies in the human element. The sailors who braved storms, depth charges, and the constant threat of death, the engineers who maintained complex vessels in near-impossible conditions, and the intelligence officers who fought unseen battles in offices thousands of miles away, all contributed to a story of resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation under pressure. The lost city beneath the Atlantic reminds us that warfare is not only measured in victories or losses, but in the innovation and determination that allow humans to survive, and sometimes thrive, under the most extreme circumstances. Even today, divers, historians, and naval enthusiasts can trace the faint outlines of the empire that once dominated the Atlantic. Every sunken hull, every hidden dock, every faint sonar echo is a reminder of a time when secrecy, strategy, and survival converged beneath the waves. The lost city remains a monument not to conquest, but to endurance, to human ingenuity, and to the silent hidden battles that shaped the course of history.